Good evening. Welcome back to another episode of Please Call Me Crazy, brought to you by Free People Radio and powered by our favorite sponsor, TireGet.com. That's TireGet.com. You have to buy tires from somebody, you might as well buy them from us. Help fund the movement, help support the movement. We believe in the freedom of movement, and that's exactly what the establishment wants to take from you now. I'm your host, Royce White, here in the belly of the beast, Minneapolis, Minnesota. And the day is Friday, May 31st, year of our Lord 2024. Um, Historic times in our nation for all the wrong reasons after watching the verdict come back yesterday against Donald Trump, 34 counts, all guilty. The only word that accurately describes what we're seeing is tyranny. Tyranny. Tyranny, tyranny, no other way to say it. And look, the mainstream media and social media and big tech and all of these other liberal institutions, the same sort of posh, mealy mouthed East Coast or Ivy League elite that think nothing of you as working class American citizens, or even more, the poor. They think nothing of you, and they just believe that they can manufacture your consent. They believe they can, pump enough propaganda into the machine that the sort of the ripple effect will be we can do whatever we want. Nobody will ask questions. The American people won't ask questions. The American people are too dumb to ask questions. The American people are too dumb to see what's really taking place here. And some people, to be quite honest, have no clue what's happened here. They still are living under the illusion that Donald Trump is a career criminal, and this is justice. This is long overdue. Scary, scary to think that the mainstream media and propaganda works that effectively, but it does. It does. It has. It's shown that it has throughout history. But now they have a problem. Now their appetites were bigger than their stomach. Their eyes were bigger than their stomach on this one, because at the same time they saw the ability to use social media and the internet to spread the propaganda even more effectively. Now they have to contend with the free access that everybody has, and people have very differing opinions than the party sort of establishment company line from the mainstream media industrial complex. And I've seen countless people say on social media that they had no plans on voting for Donald Trump in 2024. They've never voted Republican before. They don't even vote, but they're going to vote for Donald Trump now. The question becomes, who's going to count the vote? We gotta be mindful of that. We got to get on the same track about that. We got to get some type of coordinated strategy on that. We got to get people out there who are lawyers and legal funds and all of these things to put forward their best effort, their best possible effort to prepare um, America America for a legal fight and the outcome of this election. But again, you can't even say that the election had fraud in it, which is almost unbelievable. I mean, Donald Trump getting walked to the gallows and brought up in some show trial or kangaroo witch hunt is a kangaroo court witch hunt trial. That this isn't the beginning of it. This is the result of what has already been long underway, well underway. And it starts with something as simple as you can't say you think the elections aren't secure. You can't say that you would believe the elections need to be more secure. You can't even say it. How did we give up this much freedom? How did we give up this much freedom? Are we going to let them tell us that our founding fathers were so racist and bigoted and sexist and misogynistic that now we're going to allow the government of the United States of America and career politicians tell us what we can and can't say and what we can and can't think? Pretty soon you're going to have thought crimes. And for all of you people out there who are so gung ho on Neuralink, and all of this advanced artificial intelligence technology, how long before they start claiming that AI can read people's thoughts? That Neuralink is keeping a record of people's thoughts. And now you can what? You can prosecute people on thought crimes? And let's be clear about this whole juror of 12 deal. This whole process has been flawed for a long time as well. It really has. Because your jury, your people, a jury of your peers is only as strong as the collective and aggregate in intelligence and discernment of your population, of the American populace, or any populace anywhere in the world. And so when you have times that are extremely polarized and politicized like we live in now, how can you get a fair trial? If and it's scary, for example, that how do we even approach justice with as far as things has come? For example, they're putting a gag order on Donald Trump, but they're not putting a gag order on all the media institutions to speak about Donald Trump in a let's say a defamatory or inflationary or demeaning or discrediting. They're not telling the media that they can't talk about Donald Trump. How is that fair? How is the media able to spin their narrative about what the outcome of an election should be, and any would-be juror might have access or hear that? How is that fair? I mean, the a la carte sort of application of the United States Constitution has gotten so out of control. I venture to say we are no longer living in the United States of America. This is the country formerly known as the United States of America. We are living in some strange political kabuki theater where we just bring people up on whatever charges we want because we don't like them. We don't like their personality. We don't like their politics. We don't like their views. So we just prosecute them. And people are actually cheering for that. I mean, imagine you sick, twisted, stupid Negroes out there celebrating a man being brought up on charges that were completely politically motivated because you don't like his politics. And what you fail to acknowledge, and I always go back to this because again, racism is going to be used. And if you need an example, go ahead and look at this trial with Donald Trump. Who'd they go get? Black guy, Alvin Bragg. Of course, he's going to play the race card. When the verdict comes back, what's the first thing these liberals and Democrats are going to point to? Don't forget the New York Five. And just as a little bit of sprinkle on top, now we're saying that there's an audio recording somewhere out there that nobody's ever heard, but there's an audio recording somewhere out there where Donald Trump used the N word. Identity politics, race. So for all of those who say, oh, don't talk about race, don't talk about race. No, we're going to talk about race today. We're going to talk about race in general. We're going to keep talking about race until they stop using black people to destroy the United States Constitution and the basic human rights that it guarantees all of us. We are going to talk about race. If you can't deal with it, you get ready to be a slave because I guarantee you, you might not be interested in race, but the way race is used by this establishment is interested in you, deeply interested in you. And they're going to use all of these black bourgeois celebrities to justify Donald Trump being convicted in a trial that should have never seen the light of day in court. And you celebrate, you cheer, and you think that that won't come down on you in the future at some point? They think they're protected. They think they're protected by the status quo. They think they're protected by the conventional wisdom of the political elite, the economic and corporate elite of this country. They think they're protected from tyranny. Nobody's safe. Nobody's safe when tyranny is afoot. Nobody is safe when tyranny is afoot. And they're going to use his personal flaws and his past and Stormy Daniels of all people. I mean, it's hard to even put into words. It really is. But we are living in and the scary thing is they actually have the audacity to try and convince you that a person like me is unhinged. Well, you out there who watch the podcast, you know that I'm not unhinged or crazy. I mean, we actually named the podcast "Please Call Me Crazy" to be facetious and kind of highlight how silly and ridiculous some of those accusations can really be, how far from the truth they can really get. And they've gotten really far from the truth. You got the Star Tribune, you got the New York Times, you got the Washington Post, you got all the usual suspects lining up again to try and tell you that I'm crazy. Well, please call me crazy. Is it crazy to want a border? Is it crazy to say we shouldn't get into a nuclear war with the Russians? Is it crazy to say that every time we raise the debt ceiling, and we print money that we don't have, we create a downstream effect on the working class and the poor in this country? An inflationary, there's an inflationary sort of impact that comes from bad monetary policy. Is that crazy to say? Are any of those things crazy to say? I don't think one of them's crazy. And then they say, I can't say that there's a Jewish elite that's secular and corrupt. Yeah, there's a black elite that's secular and corrupt. And in fact, there's a black elite, and there are Jews, and there are whites, and there are Latinos, and there are Chinese, and there are everything in between that are both secular and non secular, who are both corrupt and who aren't corrupt. I mean, there's a little bit of everything on both sides of any line. I know plenty of people who profess to believe in God, who say they're religious, who are non-secular, that are black, white, and Jewish, and they're corrupt. I mean, it's just a reality. It really is. But all of that stuff is just used as a distraction. And the reality now, today, after that show trial we saw and the guilty verdict that's come down, the reality today is you have never needed to become more serious about your citizenship. You have never needed to be more serious about the implications of an election cycle. You have never needed to be more serious about the basic human rights that for so long we've been able to take for granted as just some symbol on a document that exists somewhere, protected by our government, enforced by our government, presided over by our government, by the judicial branch or the legislative branch or the executive branch. Well, now it's on you. The American citizen, each and every American citizen out there, it's on you to be resilient. It's on you to be wise, to see through the smoke and mirrors, to be able to dig through the propaganda and find the truth. It's on all of you. Same as I said at my convention speech, nothing's changed. It's on you. It's on you. There's no white knight coming to save you. That's the truth. Now, you can either choose, you can either pick, you can either elect politicians and leaders who tell you what you want to hear, or you can pick the ones who tell you what you need to hear. And as long as we continue to pick people who tell us what we want to hear and not what we need to hear, we're going to be in a situation like we are today. What you need to hear, not what you want to hear. What you want to hear is, is for children. And in fact, we do a better job of not telling our children what they need to hear. I mean, what they want to hear. We typically try to tell children what they need to hear. But we've created this fictitious, world and reality and culture and society for adults where we tell each other what we want to hear. And your leaders reflect that. So one guy comes in, Donald Trump, he tells people what they need to hear, and everybody loses their minds. So too is the case with my campaign. So too is all the attacks from the Star Tribune. Give me a break. The Star Tribune is a communist newspaper. That's the reality. The Star Tribune can write whatever they want. If you believe a single ounce of it, I mean, I don't even know what to say. I honestly don't. They're lying. But then I ask myself why you would be reading the Star Tribune in the first place. I don't read the Star Tribune. The only reason I'm reading the Star Tribune now is because they're writing lies about me in it. That's the only reason. If not, I wouldn't read the Star Tribune. I haven't read the Star Tribune since I was playing high school ball and winning state championships here in Minnesota. And I was following the sports because the sports is at least a wee bit more objective. There was a team that won, a team that lost. There was a box score. People put statistics in it. I mean, that's, even the take on sports journalism, I've never taken seriously. Who takes the sports writer seriously? I mean, it's almost it's laughable. It's a joke. But the joke's on us because enough of us still pay attention. Enough of us still have bought into the establishment, the media, the propaganda. Enough of us have still bought in to the point where it's almost like we know it's not true, but we just can't seem to pull away from it. Why? Because everybody else. Hey, did you read the Star Tribune today? Hey, did you see that article in the New York Times? Hey, did you see what they said on CNN? Hey, did you see what? Did you see what is going to be the death of freedom in this country? Did you hear about is going to be the death of American freedom. Did you hear about is going to be the death of American freedom. That need to be tied in to the sort of social village communication is going to be the death of your of American freedom. It's going to be the death of your freedom. It already is. You're already living in a tyrannical state. You just don't know it yet. You just don't see it. And a lot of people do see it. Don't get me wrong. There are a lot of people who see it. There are more people who are starting to see it. But the fact remains, there are some out there who still just do not see it. They want to, I would never celebrate. I don't like Barack Obama at all. I know exactly who he is. I know exactly what he stands for. I know exactly what he did when he was in office. I know exactly what he's doing now that he's out of office. I know exactly the agenda and the sort of prevailing status quo that he and all the people around him and like him mean to uphold. I know exactly who these people are, and they know I know who they are. And that's why there's this coordinated attack on me through the media that they hold so much influence over. If you question how much influence they have over the media, just look at how much disproportionate support the mainstream media has for them. And it tells you everything you need to know. Star Tribune, they would endorse Barack Obama. Star Tribune, they endorse Joe Biden. Star Tribune, they endorse Governor Tim Walz. Star Tribune, Star Tribune, Star Tribune now softly endorses even my primary Republican, candidate, Joe Frazier. The entire editorial board yesterday evening said I was unfit to be a United States senator. I mean, they're just pulling that latent sort of liberal racism right off in front of everyone, and they think people are too stupid to see it. I mean, it's actually an insult of people's intelligence. They're saying a young, black, militant man who says what he wants and has no sense of political correctness or, let's say, a thin veil of civility, the sort of theater that we as statesmen expect to be upheld. This guy's not fit to be a United States senator. He's not fit. But Joe Biden is fit. Joe Biden is fit to be a president of the United States, but I'm not fit to sit in the Senate. Hmm. And they think you'll believe it. But it was funny that the entire editorial board came to this conclusion. I mean, wow. Wow, talk about arriving. Sometimes you get a criticism that comes from the right set of people at the right time that can't be seen as anything but an endorsement. I mean, it really wasn't an endorsement. It really is a badge of honor. I mean, does the Star Tribune think we don't know who they are? Do any of these local mainstream media newspapers think we don't know who they are? The entire editorial board finds me unfit to run for United States Senate because of what? Campaign expenditures that are about 24 hours away from being completely explained. And then what are they going to say? Well, then they're going to say that I what? That I got evicted from an apartment after COVID? A lot of people couldn't pay their bills after COVID. A lot of people had trouble with employment after COVID, small businesses after COVID. Small businesses are shutting down at an all-time high rate in this country. A lot of people had those issues. 9 grand. I mean, they're actually circling the wagons and calling me unfit because I owe 9 grand of personal debt on that matter. $9,000. Now, don't get me wrong. $9,000 to the average working class citizen is a lot of money. In fact, they say that your average, American family can't put together $500 in a crisis. And that's exactly what the story is meant to do. The story is meant to make it seem like, man, $9,000, that's a lot of money. But it's not even pennies compared to the amount of money that they steal from you. And that's the only thing that makes me unfit to be United States Senator, because I know how the financial Ponzi scheme of this country works at the highest level possible. At the highest level. I know how the financial Ponzi scheme of the whole system works. What they're really saying is, we don't trust you. We don't trust you. You're not a pair of steady hands. That's what they mean when they say I'm not fit to be United States Senator. I'm not a pair of steady hands. In D.C., there's a term, the steady hands, you learn about, where a person who they say is a pair of steady hands are the people you can count on to forego the morals and the ethics in a time of crisis to protect the status quo. Just know when you read stuff like that in the Star Tribune, that's what they're really saying. They're saying this guy's not a pair of steady hands. We can't trust him to preserve the status quo in a time of crisis. And right now, we're in a crisis. This country's in a crisis. We see it as a crisis, which it rightfully is. But don't be mistaken, they see it as a crisis too. They know people are unhappy with the way this country is being run. They know people are fed up and are starting to take account of all of the promises that have been made that haven't been kept. They see the crisis the same way we do. They have their own crisis. Their crisis is to try and preserve it. Our crisis is to try and change it. And it really is that simple. If you vote for an Amy Klobuchar, if you vote for a Joe Biden, if you vote for a Tim Walz, if you vote for a Joe Frazier, even on the Republican side, you are voting for people who think America is generally in a pretty good position. And the way things have been is totally fine. That's what you're voting for. The editorial board of the Star Tribune says that I'm unfit to be a United States Senator. Just say, Negro, please. I'd respect it more if the Star Tribune just came out and said, Negro, please. Negro, you must have lost your mind. There ain't no way in hell we would ever, ever support you becoming a United States Senator. They even say in the article, there are 100 senators. Yeah, 100 United States senators run this country. They're in charge of the legislation. Yes, that is true. And what the Star Tribune is saying, you're gonna let some conspiracy theorist whack job Negro be a United States Senator? You white folks out there, you Republicans, you Minnesota Republicans, you're going to let some conspiracy theorist Negro be a United States Senator? They just can't say it that way, but that's what they really want to say. And they don't mind drawing on Republican support or Republican emotion or Republican conventional wisdom or consensus. They don't mind drawing on the Republican Party here in this country, not the party itself, but Republican voters to execute that agenda. And they've shown that. I mean, right now, they believe that they'll be able to get to the national convention there in Milwaukee and not endorse Donald Trump because of this conviction. And there are a lot of people in the party across the nation who are working on that very agenda right now. They have their tentacles out there. They have their Trump in public, but never Trump in private people out there who right now are trying to coordinate an effort to not endorse Donald Trump at that convention because he's been convicted. You watch how many people stand up and make that argument. You watch how many people make that suggestion, make that recommendation that Donald Trump not be endorsed because of this conviction. When everything that we see on the internet, across social media, all of the reports that we get in real time of real people say Donald Trump's support is greater than it's ever been. And it's him being convicted that has generated it. It's the very thing they used to indict him that has brought him more support than he's ever had. And it's not necessarily about him. And see, they want to personalize it. They want to say, well, you support a convicted felon or you support Donald Trump for any of the, and look at what he said or look at what he's done. Is these people have a failure, a grave failure of the concept American citizenship. They have a crisis of citizenship, the idea of citizenship. We have a crisis of the idea of citizenship in this country, but those people in particular, they have a crisis of citizenship. They think that politics is all about people, individual people, personalities. We're going to start calling it personality politics. Politics isn't all about personalities. Sure, personality is an aspect and it's something that should be considered. And sometimes it can help you, sometimes it can hurt you. I think in my case, being endorsed, personality helped me. But personality isn't everything. What are the ideas? What are the fundamental ideas? And right now, we face a crisis of fundamental idea about the separation of powers and the ability for the mainstream media to pump enough propaganda to the populace to execute an agenda through a corrupt kangaroo witch hunt show trial. That's the crisis we face now. And that supersedes Donald Trump as an individual person. It really does. It really supersedes the details of what took place, if I'm being quite honest. And like I said, I do not like Barack Obama. I know exactly who he is. I know exactly what he did. I know exactly what he didn't do. I know what he represents. I know what he represents to this day. I don't like Joe Biden. I know exactly what he represents. I would never celebrate Joe Biden or Barack Obama or anybody else on that side of the aisle being prosecuted for political purposes. Political prosecution. I would never celebrate that out of sacred honor. And these people have shown they have no sacred honor. And the problem with that is this. When one side decides that sacred honor is no longer a priority, is no longer going to be observed, is no longer going to be acted upon. When there is no more sacred honor, you almost leave the other side no choice. Because it becomes a matter of survival. Sure, we'd like to do it honorably. We'd like to keep that sacred honor intact. But when your opponents say, hey, we're not going to play by the rules, if you continue to play by the rules, you're a fool. You're a fool. And that's the scary part about this whole deal. I'm talking about at the broadest level. Not saying individually that you should start breaking the law or breaking the rules. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying when one side of the equation, one participant in the game decides that they're not going to play by the rules anymore, what do they expect everybody else to do exactly? I mean, that's probably the greatest sign of their narcissism and arrogance. A person who thinks that they're going to break the rules and expects everybody else to continue to play by him. That is the darkest and ugliest sort of a psychosocial analysis of this entire situation. We have a group of people who are so hell-bent on their agenda, who are so brainwashed in their ideology, who are so focused on their goal. They have no problem bending the rules, and they expect that everybody else is going to continue to play by them. That everybody else is going to sit back, watch, and say, hey, that's fine. We'll keep playing by the rules. It's not going to happen. And that slow decay, that slow rot of American culture and American society has been underway for a long time. It didn't just start now, and it didn't just start with the Democrats, and it's not just on the Republicans. I had somebody say, oh, well, a lot of people have spent time in prison who were wrongfully convicted. Oh, you think? You mean like the 3 black men here in Minnesota who had their convictions overturned? Wrongful convictions overturned after spending several years in prison in cases where Amy Klobuchar was the lead prosecutor? But everybody's gonna vote for her, huh? I've never been a lead prosecutor. I may have some debt from an apartment, that my mother was, evicted from. And actually, she wasn't evicted. She was given an eviction notice, and the rent was actually paid at the end of the lease, and she left the apartment. But when you have a UD eviction go to court, it stays on your record until they take it off, even if you pay the final balance. And I told the Star Tribune this. It's so ironic. It's so ironic that the Star Tribune and all these other liberal mainstream media institutions and outlets claim that they're working on behalf of the people, especially poor people, especially poor black people, and of everybody, lower working class single black mothers the most. They claim that this is who their whole fighting agenda is for. So if my mom wanted to have an abortion, then they're 100% on board. But if she has trouble paying her rent as a single black woman who's raising two college age children, if she has trouble paying her rent, they can't wait to run her name through the mud in the New York Times. And they did mention it in the New York Times. And this is who these people really are. And this is why we're going to go door to door, all through Minneapolis and St. Paul. And we're going to tell the people, the black community, you thought you were going to shame us. But my mother's going to end up being a beacon of your lies and your duplicity. She's going to be a beacon of the way the mainstream media and the liberal, leftist, progressive, whatever you want to call them, neocon, neoliberal, permanent political class really thinks about black women. You want to talk, you want to know what your Democrat liberal institutions, your Democratic liberal order really thinks about single black women? Look at how they talked about my mother not being able to pay her rent. Not that it's a sign of resilience, not that it's a sign of being a fighter, not that it's a sign of being somebody who works hard, but that she should be ashamed. Well, she's not ashamed, and I'm not ashamed. She has no reason to be ashamed, and I have no reason to be ashamed. People have financial problems in this country. And part of it is because the Star Tribune, as much as they want to say they're a newspaper for the people, they never once would talk about the Federal Reserve. And in all of the coverage they've had of me over the last week or two, 3, 4 articles, hit pieces. I mean, they're just pouring it on nonstop. They're showing their desperation. And I think Minnesotans can see it. But of all of the articles, they never once talk about a fundamental core issue, an institutional issue like the Federal Reserve and how the money works. Just like with Donald Trump, they never want to talk about how NATO works. They never want to talk about our trade agreement with China. And you think that's by accident? It's no accident. It's by design. It's by design, 100% by design. They do not care about you. They don't care about you. They never have cared about you. That's the reality. We don't need to circle the wagons every time they tell a new lie. They never have cared about you. They've never cared about you. Have they ever cared about you? Have they ever really held the line for you to be prosperous or have well being? Have they? Tell me when. Tell me a time when this Democrat Party or a Democrat politician or this whole Democrat worldview. Tell me when it really stood up for you. Their whole pitch is a proxy vote. The pitch of the entire Democrat platform is a proxy vote. It's not to say what we're going to do for you. It's to say what to be scared of from that person. Why to fear them? That's their whole pitch. And on face value, you should know that that's not genuine. What are you going to do for us? And that's why when Ice Cube asked the question, what do black people get for their vote? For voting Democrat, what do we get? And he said it right. He asked the question perfect. What do we get out of it? They crucified him. They tried to crucify him right away. You ask a logical question, you get crucified. You ask a logical question, you get scrutinized. You ask a logical question, you have your character assassinated. Okay, we're ready for it. My skin is as thick as it gets. It's as thick as it gets. I love being in conflict and confrontation with these people. I love it. That's why they call me the hatchet man. I'm the hatchet man. Their accusations don't bother me. It doesn't move me. I know what's true and what's not true. I know that they got the audacity to mention the Guitar Center as a mysterious or illegitimate campaign expense from 2022. Does the Star Tribune or the New York Times not realize that the Guitar Center sells audio equipment and that any modern campaign that does any type of media on a regular basis needs certain things that you would find at your every everyday Guitar Center anywhere across the country? Do you idiots out there realize that Guitar Center is a nationwide franchise that sells audio equipment? Microphone speakers, microphone stands, wires, cords, plugins, things that you need to do media. I mean, you mean to tell me they don't know that? They know. They think you don't know. They think you're stupid. They're not stupid. I mean, there's a level, if you reach up a notch, there's a level where they get stupid. Um, but that's not it. They know. They're intentionally lying to you. They're intentionally misrepresenting the facts. They're intentionally, I mean, it's just like, where are the apology pieces from the Star Tribune on COVID-19? Where? Where are the apology pieces for everybody who said that this virus leaked from a lab? Where are the apology pieces for the people who said that gain of function research was potentially to blame? Where are the apology pieces for defaming all of the American citizens out there who were open to trying early treatment therapeutics like ivermectin, which has since been greatly vindicated, if not completely vindicated? Where are their apology pieces? They never apologize. And they want you to think we're the narcissists? We're living in a cult? No, a cult is where you can't criticize the cult masters or the cult hierarchy whatsoever, even being right, and receive any acknowledgement from them. Any accountability. There's no accountability. Even Chris Cuomo is out there trying to beg to at least show some face with accountability just in good faith. Chris Cuomo's out there like, guys, come on. I mean, if we're gonna cheat, if we're gonna cheat to win, the least we could do is be graceful about it. The least we could do is retain some resemblance of integrity and honesty. And he's actually smart to do that because the pendulum swings both ways. And any smart man would know, as tyrannical as you are when you have the power, when the shoe is on the other foot, you can best believe you're going to receive the same or worse. And that's a game that we shouldn't get into. That's a road we shouldn't travel down. That's a road we should not travel down. I would never celebrate if Barack Obama or Joe Biden were brought up on charges, trumped up charges that were politically motivated. I would never celebrate a conviction. I wouldn't even celebrate them being brought into the courtroom. But see, the great crisis of citizenship in this country is that as long as things stay, relatively convenient, we're okay with tyranny. In fact, I would venture to say even there are people who crave tyranny. Somebody asked me that the other day. Why are people putting up with this? Why are people tolerating this? I think a lot of us, you know, overestimate people. People love tyranny. There's a great, there's a great sort of attraction to tyranny. And I don't mean people who aspire to be tyrants, although there is some of that baked into this whole deal. Not only do people crave tyranny because it's convenient when you can sort of let go of all of the governance in your life to a authority, whether they're corrupt or righteous. Not only that, but there is a small, tiny part of the person who will accept tyranny that also desires to be a tyrant. And you almost get a sort of tyranny by proxy that if I become a part of this collective or aggregate populace, or we the people, or, everyday average person who accepts the tyranny in a way, I have a bit of the power of the tyranny as well. Oh, they'll say that's too deep. But hey, Joe Frazier has more gravitas than Royce White intellectually. Yeah, Joe Frazier is more palatable. I bet he is more palatable because he doesn't say anything. He says nothing original. That's why he lost the endorsement. That's why he lost at the convention. He didn't say anything. He brought former gubernatorial candidate Kendall Qualls, who I find okay. I mean, I like Kendall. I've met him. He's a good guy. We agree on a lot of things. There's some very central issues that we completely disagree on, and those are going to come to the surface here and during this campaign. And I'm happy to do it for you, Minnesota Republicans. Thank you. Thank you, God, that I have the opportunity to play the challenge to some of the conventional wisdom in this party here in Minnesota and all around the country. Thank you. I am so happy to do it for you. I really am. I actually enjoy it. Do I enjoy the petty slings and arrows along the way? No. I mean, it's kind of frustrating because at the end of the day, it's so petty. All I think to myself is, this is why you've lost your country. This is why we've all lost the country, because we're petty. But again, back to my point, Joe Frazier, my opponent, he brings up and here, in the interest of fairness, I would invite Joe Frazier to come on the podcast anytime he wants, as much as he wants. We could debate and talk on the podcast for the next month straight until the primary season begins. I think it begins there in early July. We can he can Joe, you have an open invitation to come on the podcast. I know I tried to debate you before the endorsement and get you in a candidate forum, and you refused, and that says a lot about how strongly you trust your message on the issues. But hopefully now you won't be able to duck a debate, because actually I look forward to the debate. I look forward to it in a way I can't even quite describe. It's unquantified. My desire, my enthusiasm, my sort of gut excitement about a debate with Joe Frazier is so great, I can't even put into words. It's literally indescribable and unquantifiable. I could not want it anymore. I would love, love, love to debate Joe Frazier. Please, please, please. Oh, please, dear God, please let Joe, dear God, please let Joe Frazier muster up the courage to debate me in a public forum. Please, I would love to let the American people, the citizens of the state of Minnesota, see the stark contrast between my views on the world and their citizenship and a person like Joe Frazier. Please let that happen. Please, please, please. I would really appreciate that. But it tells you everything you need to know that the Star Tribune endorses Joe Frazier. I mean, I think I could pretty much win the debate on the opening stanza. In the opening bid, in the opening act, in the opening remarks, I think I could pretty much win the debate in just simply reminding people that the Star Tribune who endorsed Tim Walz, who endorsed Amy Klobuchar, who endorsed Joe Biden, is now endorsing Joe Frazier. But that's just me. We'll see how many other Minnesotans think the same way. That's what's great about it. We love elections. I love when Steve Bannon says, we love elections. We want to have elections. We're going to win elections. We are going to win elections because the people have had a belly full of it. They really have. And they're fed up, and rightfully so. Rightfully so. Yeah, they can tell you I'm crazy. Fine. Why? Because I'm stupid enough to actually come sit down in front of this camera and talk to you 3-4 times a week and let you know how I really think. I will come to this spot 3 to 4 times a week for an hour and a half and let the American people know what I really think. That's why they want to make it about the Guitar Center. That's why they want to make it about hotels, that we spend campaign money on hotels. Absolutely, we did. Yeah, we're in charge to provide room and board for individuals who give services to the campaign. Videography, content, editing, door knocking, campaign managers, all of those people have a right to request that we provide room and board and any other travel expenses. Absolutely. But they know that. They think you don't. They think you don't know that after a primary is done, you still have the right to keep your PAC open, your House campaign PAC open, as long as you want. Most people keep them open because they plan to run for Congress again, because running for Congress tends to be a grift where you can raise a lot of money and you can pay your friends for their services to the campaign in the amount of tens of thousands of dollars. So there are PACs that remain open indefinitely for that very reason. Or you could legitimately want to run for Congress again, and some people have, really want to serve, in public office and change things, and there's that too. I'm not saying there isn't, but the point is, because of that, many people raise money after their primary, raise money after the election to try and get donor money or to do media appearances to properly position them for the next race. Maybe they want to go back and support the candidate that did win or lost or whatever the case may be. Whatever they feel they need to do to position themselves for a future race or for the closure of their campaign, they're completely allowed to spend campaign funds to do. And the Star Tribune knows that. And all the experts they went to go ask, they know that. Remember, when they go and get an expert, when they go ask an expert, you have to put that on trial. Never forget, they marched Dr. Fauci up there to tell you everything he told you. He was considered an expert. He was the lifelong National Institute of Health expert, wasn't he? And he stood right up there and lied. And will he ever see a day in court? It's funny. Donald J. Trump, 34 guilty verdicts. 34 guilty verdicts. Donald J. Trump and the Epstein clientele is still out there walking around doing the same thing they've been doing for the last 30 years. Not a peep. Not a peep from Alvin Bragg on prosecuting the Epstein clientele list or even investigate. Not a peep from Fannie Willis. Not a peep from, Jane or whoever. Not a peep. You can't even say Epstein. You're a conspiracy theorist. Even though we all know, even though a court found that everything people believed about Jeffrey Epstein was more or less true. And they still call you a conspiracy theorist for bringing it up. It's just one of those issues that's in this category of a number of issues that makes you a conspiracy theorist. I had a New York Times reporter tell me that JFK being killed by certain individuals was a conspiracy theory. I'm going to post that in. Matter of fact, one of the podcasts coming up here for Please Call Me Crazy is going to be the 1-30-minute conversation that I had with the New York Times reporter, Michelle Goldberg, who did her best to write a sort of hit piece on me. And the opening remarks had nothing to do about my policy positions, has nothing to do with your citizenship, It's all personality politics. The opening remarks of Michelle Goldberg's piece, op-ed in the New York Times, which none of us from the other side get a chance to write. I mean, imagine when you talk about election interference or campaign laws around the equal distribution of time given to each candidate. Do they account for all of the hours and all of the free promotion and advertising that the New York Times gives to my opponent by allowing a person to write an op-ed? And none of us get to write op-eds? Why can't I demand that the New York Times allow me to represent myself in the op-ed in the same capacity they did something that would benefit my opponent? I mean, this is the stuff they're doing right in front of your face, and they want you to play by those rules. In fact, they demand it of you. And what they just did to Donald Trump is exactly that. They're demanding of you that you continue to play by the rules even if they decide not to. New York Times hit piece on me. Another example. We're going to write a hit piece right out in the open about a candidate that benefits the other candidate. And we don't care if you know that we should, by law, have to give equal time to Royce to represent his views. We don't care if you think that. Sue us. That's their position. Sue us. We got the money. You don't. You small people out there across this country, you working class deplorables, you don't have the money to fight us. We got the institution. We got the machine behind us. We got the system. The same system we said was guilty when George Floyd died. We have that same system behind us. You can't fight us. Sue us. That's what the New York Times is really saying. And if you look into who owns it or who has a majority stake, or you'll find the same, the usual suspects. You'll find BlackRock, Vanguard, and whoever else. You'll find the hedge funds and all the people who have a vested interest. And what they're really telling you is when you get high enough up the trough, it's all money. It's all money. Yet they want to call me corrupt for $5,200 of campaign funds. $5,200. The New York Times, by the end of the article, had outlined $5,200 that seemed illegitimate. Was it I don't even know if that was the New York Times angle. No, that was the Star Tribune. Limos and strippers. That was their claim. And even furthermore, they made it seem as though I personally spent the money, which they have no clue about. They have no proof or evidence that I personally spent that money on either of those things. But they say it anyway, because they don't have to worry about defamation of character lawsuit, because they trust that whoever it is that would oversee that lawsuit will see things the same way they do, will have the same political motivation and agenda that they do. This is the source of their power. This is the source of what they're doing to this country. Elitist, corrupt, a la carte. Rules are for thee and not for we. That is what's going on in this country, and it's right up in your face. It's not a conspiracy. They're right up in your face with it. They said I spent money on a limo. Then when I provided the receipt of the point-to-point car service that was a four-door sedan, right? Wasn't a limousine. It was a transportation company that promotes themselves as a limousine service, because obviously most transportation services, you can get limousine service if you would like it. But they consider the entire thing a limousine service. And so when I posted the receipt of a point-to-point transfer, A to B transfer, 6-hour car ride from Tampa Bay, Florida to Atlanta, Georgia, then they said, well, what campaign business were you doing there? First, it went from he's joyriding in limousines to what campaign purposes were you really doing? They're too stupid to actually look into the fact that I went on Patrick Bet-David's podcast. He's one of the biggest political podcasts in the entire world. Good podcast, by the way. I recommend everybody go and watch it. In fact, it was pretty contentious, and I really don't necessarily agree with the viewpoint of some of the people who were on that podcast, but I thought it was good nonetheless, and I thought it was time well spent. In fact, I had a lot of people reach out after the podcast and say, "I never knew who you were, but I'm going to donate some money, and I'm going to continue to follow your career because I think we need people like you in office." Isn't that campaign related? No. Why? Because you fucking communists say. And that's the real criticism of me. I'm uncouth, right? I'm not civilized enough to be a United States senator. I'm not statesman enough to be a United States senator. And this is what they wanted. And what's funny about that is this sort of caricatured puppet kind of prop like person that they put up there in the United States Senate are the very people who have crushed this country and have crushed you 1,000%. Now it's not an argument. I'm not arguing. It's not an opinion. It's not conjecture. The number one sort of the archetype of an American politician that is responsible for crushing this country and crushing you in the process are the people who sit in the United States Senate today. And all you got to do is watch how they vote, watch what they believe in, see what they've stood for. And then take a look at how they talk and how they present themselves in the public. And you tell me what kind of politician you need. Well, you already have told me. That's why people voted for Donald Trump the first time. And I venture to say, even though he lost on paper, quote unquote, 80 million people in this country voted for Donald Trump the second time. I mean, the race was split 4 million people, and that's a lot of people. But my point is, there's a huge part of this country that desires a politician who is a little less prototypical. We better double down on that now. If you want more politicians who tell you exactly what you want to hear and not what you need to hear, you better make your plans to be a slave. And you better make your plans for that slavery to become more overt. Right now, you're a wage slave. Right now, you're a debt slave. But in the future, and I mean the very near future, you may be a physical slave. There may be a return of a more overt physical bondage, physical restriction of rights. And people say, why do you start the podcast off saying, we believe in the freedom of movement, and that's exactly what the establishment wants to take from you now? If you are an anti-human, globalist, mealy mouth, posh, cosmopolitan, puppet politician, puppet power broker for the masters of the universe, and you regard humanity as this sort of inconvenient plague on existence, what do you really want in the end? What are you really trying to achieve? What agenda are you really trying to execute? You want people to become less of a burden, less of a hindrance, less of an inconvenience. How do you do that? You restrict their freedom of movement. You can kill them, you can poison them, you can confine them by any number of political mechanisms, but mostly, in order to do that, the best way is to get them to believe in their own bondage, in their own slavery, in their own chains, to believe that it's good for them. And that's what people are starting to believe. Neuralink? Are you kidding me? I saw this clip go viral, and the guys, dragging the mouse, the cursor across the screen, with his mind, and the reporter or the host of the show is just so you know amazed at what are you're amazed. Like, this is a good I mean, these are the Herman Kahn, technocrat, dystopian George Orwell. Is George Orwell a conspiracy theory? I mean, I know it's a fictional book, it's a fictional tale, it's a fictional sort of, fictional, theoretical, hypothetical, story. But do you people not regard George Orwell as a great writer, a prolific writer, a historic writer of American literature? Or even human lit the history of human literature? Do you not regard George Orwell as somebody who should be revered and admired and read upon? Do you people regard George Orwell as a conspiracy theorist? The answer is yes, they do. If you really start asking them, the answer is yes, they absolutely do. They absolutely regard anybody who fears the rise of technology in modern human civilization, anybody who regards that as something we should be cautious of or even outright reject, anybody who brings those type of criticisms or poses those type of challenges to that status quo are regarded as crazy. But just tell me how you think Neuralink is going to end up working out when everybody in the West appears to be bending their knee for the CCP in China, and China already has social credit scores. China already has the biggest surveillance system in the world, the biggest public surveillance system in the world. And they're tracking and surveilling every single thing their citizens do. They are effectively restricting the movement of their citizens in China right now today. And they tell you, oh, well, don't worry about China. We got problems here. That's what the bourgeois woke Negroes tell you from the HBCUs, and they're from the belly of the beast, the pastors who go on the grift with all the Democrats all across the country. People are starting to figure it out. I had a conversation in a household with a black family just last week, and they're starting to figure it out. They're saying, wait a second. Wait a second, wait a second. Who was the party that freed the slaves? Wait a second, wait a second. Who's the party that wants to make the government smaller? Wait a second. Who's the party that wants to give me less taxes? Wait a second. Wait a second, wait a second, wait a second. How are the Democrats able to convince us to vote for them? Wait a second. And the answer has been typically through the churches. That the people like Amy Klobuchar go to your local pastors who have really big church followings, and they do their appearances and they do their photo ops and they post them online and you know they go and whether or not black people really are voting for Amy Klobuchar, they put out enough propaganda to justify the numbers. And that's what we have to be worried about now. I've been telling you for a year. I've been telling you for a year, all of you conservatives out there who say, let's stop talking about race. Let's not talk about race anymore. It'll just go away. You're not even seeing the game. The game is, as long as the racial narrative stays the way that it has been in this country for the last 60 years, they can use it to justify any rigging that they do of elections. And the only people who could stand up and say, we don't agree with, we don't appreciate, we reject the way that our identity and our communities have been used in these election proceedings, in these elections, the only people who can do that are black people. And they're starting to do it. But we need them to do it even more. And I'm sorry if you can hear the car alarm going off outside the studio. I can hear it. I'm not sure if you can hear it or not, but it's pretty loud. I apologize for it. But anyway, that's the reality. The reality is that identity politics are being played. For example, Smoking Joe Frazier, and I call him Smoking Joe because they had the audacity to say up goes Frazier on the internet in regards to Joe Frazier coming out and saying he's going to primary me. Of course he's going to primary me. Mr. If We're Killing Russians, I'm in. And that is his name. That's what we're going to refer to him to now in my campaign and anywhere that I go. Joe Frazier's new nickname is Mr. If We're Killing Russians, I'm in. Why does he have that nickname? He's in complete support of funding the Ukraine war. Simple. But not only that, I had a couple of delegates come up to me at the convention and tell me when they asked Joe Frazier about the Ukraine war, his response was, and I quote them, if we're killing Russians, I'm in. These are the people who already represent you in D.C. Let's be clear. This isn't a departure from the norm. That sort of Atlanticist, neocon, neoliberal thinking is what's already representing you in D.C. And as international dignitaries all around the world, these are the Victoria Newlands and Bob Keegans of the world. Whether they have an R by their name or a D by their name, they have the same worldview. And the worldview, as I've said on this podcast many times before, the worldview is a structure of our society that is predicated on death and debt. We have a death and debt culture. We have a death and debt society. The question is, do we have to? And even furthermore, do you want to? Are you okay with that? Are you okay with sending your sons and daughters to die on a Russian battlefield, on a Ukrainian battlefield, for something that gives you no benefit as a citizen? No benefit whatsoever. In fact, you're going to pay for it. Not only are you going to send your sons and daughters, but you're going to pay to send your sons and daughters to a war. I can't even believe I can't even believe the proposition. I can't even believe that it's being proposed. The proposal is offensive. The proposal should insult you. You're going to pay to send your sons and daughters to die on a battlefield a world away that has no benefit for you? Are you kidding me? Get ready. All of you patriots out there, get ready. It's going to be a summer full of protest. Peaceful protest. Peaceful protest this summer. It's going to need to happen. I'm done listening to everybody saying protesting doesn't do anything. Sure it does. Because there are other people out there who see exactly what's going on, and they need to be given permission. Right now, they need to be given permission. They need to see that there are other people out there who support them. It's difficult. It's difficult when you read the news and you got an opinion and you think to yourself, man, that just doesn't seem right. But you look outside and you see nobody in the streets saying the same thing you're saying, the same thing you're thinking up in your home. I was there during the George Floyd situation. I know what took place. I understood the psychology of protesting. There are people out there who don't even have well-formulated opinions. There are people who have very, very strong opinions. There are people who just want to go connect with other people, who feel disconnected from humanity, from other people. And that's why they join the protest. They don't know about the Federal Reserve. I bring people to the Fed. They're like, what are we doing at this building? It doesn't even got a name on it. Where are we? Doesn't matter. Come out and join us. We'll figure this out together. Let's talk about these things. Let's not let CNN tell us who we are and how to live. Let's not let MSNBC tell us who we are and how to live. Let's not let Fox News tell us who we are and how to live. Let's not let the New York Times or the Star Tribune tell us who we are and how to live. Let's come together as a community and actually talk about these things, these ideas, not these identities, not these personalities, not these personal flaws. Let's talk about the ideas. And I'm telling you right now, all of you conservatives out there, if you fail to organize a grassroots initiative that is out there in the streets and showing people that they have a place to go to if they don't agree with the tyranny that's taking place in this country now, you will lose this country. I am telling you this now, the same way Dan Schultz has been telling you about the precinct strategy. If you fail now to organize a grassroots movement, a grassroots movement that's out there in the streets giving people permission to walk away from the absurdity that they are now witnessing, maybe for the first time. If you fail to do that, you will lose this country. I don't want to hear your fucking excuses about Black Lives Matter protesting. I don't want to hear your excuses about January 6th. You get yourself up off your ass. You find yourself some friends who are like-minded. You get yourself a water cooler. You get yourself some gas in your gas vehicle before those all go away. And any protester of the government and the status quo won't even be able to turn on the ignition in their electric hybrid. Okay, you get yourself some gas, you get in your car, you go to your local community rec center or whatever it is, and you get some more people together, and you go to a place where you think people need to hear the truth, and you minister the truth to those people, because that's what this campaign is going to do. We're going to march We're going to march back to the Federal Reserve peacefully, because that is the headquarters of monetary, financial, economic tyranny. We're going to go back to the Fed. But there's a Fed in there's 12 Federal Reserves around the country. There's one in New York City. There should be protests there. Where are the anti-war protests? Are all you people too busy to protest? Are all you, and if you are, and I get it, I get the financial burden, I get the financial hardship, I get how tough times are financially. But somewhere in here, we're gonna have to make a tough decision. Because if it's all about the money, whether it's raising money for a campaign or it's protecting your job to be able to pay your next set of bills, if it's all about the money, then it's no surprise why we're losing. And it's no surprise why we'll lose the country. Somebody out there, somewhere out there, there has to be a band of warriors, a band of warriors that just says, "The hell with it, the hell with it." I could lose my job, I could lose my belongings, my property, I could lose it all, but I'm gonna be free. But I'm not gonna lose my freedom. At some point, the American people have to make that decision. You think they didn't have jobs in 1968 during the civil rights movement? You think they didn't have jobs or have financial responsibilities when we fought a revolutionary war against the crown? You think people didn't have jobs and financial responsibilities? People helped one another out. And it is so frustrating to me being in the conservative movement. It's so frustrating to me to see, to know, to understand that the George Soroses of the world and whoever else you could name gives money to people like Black Lives Matter, who provide financial stability, financial support so people can protest. This is a brilliantly wicked strategy. The people who have money on their side of the equation know the power of consensus, of manufacturing consensus, especially in what many believe to be a democracy, even though it's a constitutional republic. Regardless, we have democratic processes. We have democratic proceed. And in a country that has democratic process, they have come to understand and weaponize the manufacturing of consent, even if it's just in the presentation. And we stand by idly and watch and say, "Oh, well, they don't represent the majority." It doesn't matter what the majority is. That's the whole scam of democracy. That's the whole scam. That's the whole heresy of democracy. It's intended to look like a majority. It's intended to feel like a majority, whether it is or not. And sometimes, if you get a big enough group of people together, if you get a big enough group of people together in one place at one spot, in one place at one spot with the same message, with the same sort of agenda and goal, if you can do that, sometimes people will follow along just out of human nature. Because there is a sort of social herd-like nature to human beings, whether we want to admit it or not. And there is a brilliance to individualism that is outlined in our founding documents, that is outlined in very, very, very intelligent philosophy throughout the history of human civilization. But there is a sort of attraction and seduction and power to the social side of human nature. And sometimes, if you get 10 people in a room, out of a room full of 15 or 20, or let's say even 100, if you can get 10 people in that room to be loud enough and on the same page, you can swing the other 90. Whether they really believe in it or not, people will follow along. And what I'm saying is the public demonstration side of the conservative, the Republican, the America First and MAGA movement, the demonstration and the public demonstration side of this movement is completely non-existent. In fact, every time people pop up to protest or demonstrate publicly from our side of the football, it seems like some government psyop to portray us as white supremacists. When I'm going all around the state meeting white people from here to Bemidji, and they all are the nicest, sweetest people you could ever meet. They know I'm black. And if they're racist, they don't show it. I'm not terrified of the white folks in Bemidji, Minnesota. I can't wait to go to Bemidji, Minnesota. It's beautiful up there, beautiful country, God's country. But you've let them misrepresent you, let them represent you that way. That's how they've represented you. And if we know one thing to be true of American politics, politics are decided by the people who show up right now in the streets. The Democrats have shown up, and that in that way, they've dominated the narrative. They've dominated the image of this country. They've dominated the headlines. They've dominated the perception of the person who's not paying so close attention because they're busy living their life, paying their bills, dealing with their relationships, with their wives or their children or their other loved ones, their friends, their coworkers. They're busy with their own little world. And everybody's little world has gotten a little bit bigger in the advent of the internet and social media. Everybody's little world has gotten a little bit bigger. So everybody's more busy than ever with their little corner of the universe. And all they need to see outside their window is that some people are marching and they're saying, George Floyd, George Floyd. That's all they needed to see. They don't need the details. They don't care about the details necessarily. And don't get me wrong, that was ugly. What happened to George Floyd was ugly. You know, am I God? Do I know what was the cause of his final breath? I don't know. I don't need to know. I know one thing, the police state that's rising up in this country just took a shot at your president. And there's a far cry difference between George Floyd and Donald Trump and how they lived their life and their past and their history and blah, blah, blah. Fine. But let me tell you this. I guarantee you now, more than ever, you see the reality, the stark reality, that in a while, shortly here, it's not going to matter what your past was. It's not going to matter how you lived your life. It's going to matter what you believe in and what you're willing to bend the knee to. And that will determine whether or not you get carted off and treated with the injustice that we saw Donald Trump treated with yesterday. And there'll be a lot of people standing there on the sidewalks cheering the whole way. Cheering the whole way while you walk toward the gallows. And it'll be in that moment that you'll look around and think to yourself, does nobody see how wrong this is? And there'll be nobody there to defend you. Because at one point you were that person in that crowd, on that sidewalk, clapping your hands when injustice was happening to somebody else. And you better wake the fuck up now. If you don't wake up now, you got no reason to complain. Do not let the Democrats out-protest you this year. Of all years, if you can set aside a little bit of time, all of you conservatives out there, all of you wealthy donors out there, if you could set aside a little bit of money to help fund a few organizations that want to organize peaceful protests to speak our mind about what is happening in this country, now would be the year. Now would be the time out there. It'd be right about now, okay? If you don't want to do it now, you may not have another chance, and you get exactly what you deserve. American politics is decided by the people who show up, and you get the government you deserve. Up until this point, we have outsourced our governance to an establishment of corrupt political puppets who deep down we knew only represented a projection of our desire to pretend like everything is okay. That is what we've done. And we were attracted to Donald Trump. People were attracted to Donald Trump because he was a departure from the norm. And there were some things we needed to hear, and there were some things we needed to consider that even if it was uncomfortable, we still deep down knew it was necessary. And we liked that. Well, now they just took him off the board. Or let's say they tried to. They didn't take him off the board. There's a lot to still happen here. But they tried to. And they're trying to with the narrative. What they're really doing is saying, you're going to vote for a convicted felon? Look at you Republicans. Look at you conservatives who made it all about morals and ethics, who made it all about personality, who made it all about personal history. Look at you conservatives who made it all about a person's legal past, who made it all about whether or not a person was fit for office, who set this high moral standard. And there's some of you conservatives and Republicans out there who still want to play by that game. You can't let it go. You don't see how it's being weaponized against you. You're in an asymmetrical culture and political war. This is asymmetrical warfare. So when I call the Star Tribune fucking communists, and you got a problem with the profanity, but you don't got a problem with them carting your fucking president off, you're telling me who you are. And to me, you're worse than the communists because you're so interested in your own sort of image of morality and ethics and your own sort of perception, your own sort of perception or how you're perceived by other people, you're willing to surrender your rights. That makes you worse than the communists. At least the communists will come right out and tell you, we don't care about your rights. But to pretend like you're trying to preserve rights and really you're interested in your own image, that is a profound lack of sacred honor. If you're not using profanity after watching that kangaroo witch hunt trial, then I don't think you're mad enough. And even furthermore, I don't think you understand the basic idea of citizenship enough. I don't think you read the part of the Bible where Jesus came through the crowd like a whirlwind, where Jesus Christ came through the crowd like a whirlwind and he turned the tables over. And it didn't make it into the scripture, but I guarantee you what he was saying to the people in the temple was a lot less than cordial, was a lot less than civilized, was a lot less than politically correct. I guarantee you it. I guarantee it. Now you get to ask yourself, what moment are we in? Are we in the temple? Are the powers that be in the temple corrupt? Have they shown they're willing to sacrifice you and anybody else you may love or care about for their own agenda? I think they've proven it. I think they've proven it. I think it was funny here in the Republican Party. Here in the Republican Party in Minnesota, I had all of this pushback from people in the state house, state representatives who, this guy Royce, he's bad for business, and he cusses too much, and he's a little bit out of control, and too much of a departure from the norm, and blah 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 blah. The day I was endorsed, and then a couple of days later, they're getting run over by the Dems in the House, not even being acknowledged. Complete and utter tyranny. Complete and utter tyranny. And I mean objective tyranny there in the Minnesota State House. They're getting pushed around. They're getting bullied. They're getting run right over. Here in the last couple of days, 2 weeks worth of hit pieces where they try and tell you, the American people, that I'm not fit for office because I'll use profanity on the internet, or because, hey, I'll question the modern formulation of sexual politics between men and women in this country. They'll tell you I'm not fit for office because the things I say on the internet, but they're going to cart your president off in a kangaroo witch hunt show trial. It's about you. It's whenever you're ready. I'll tell you this, when you're ready, I'm here to lead. If you're ready out there to do it, then I'm ready to lead. I'll stand outside the Federal Reserve for 9 hours. No problem. No problem whatsoever. We can march around the entire city of Minneapolis and minister the truth to the people who need to hear it. They're ready for it. I know they are. And I'm the one to be able to tell them. I'm ready when you are. And that goes for the entire country. When you're ready to fight, I'm ready to lead. But if you're not, if you want to lay down and take it quietly, then I can't help you. I can't help you. Not one fucking back step. This is where the rubber meets the road. This is where we hold the line. And not only do we hold the line, we double and triple down. Not one fucking back step. Not one back step. In fact, we need people to report to the front line. Report to the front line. And again, it matters. It matters. Public demonstration matters. People need permission. People need permission to participate. People need permission to break away from the norm of their everyday life. They need permission to participate in the political, and they need permission to be able to think differently than they've ever thought before. They need permission for all three of those things, and nothing gives permission like a crowd of country, God, family, country loving American citizens who've taken the time away from their work and their family and their life to provide that presence of welcome. Welcome, brothers and sisters. Welcome, fellow American citizens. Welcome, fellow Minnesotans. You have now arrived at the resistance. And this isn't going to be some guerrilla warfare, and we're not picking up arms. No, the first thing we need to do, the first thing we need to test ourselves with is, can we sustain a participation that is equal or greater to our opposition? The first way you test yourself is against the opposition. Just like in basketball, can you go harder than the other team? Who's going to get to that loose ball? There's a 50-50 ball there. Who's going to get it? Who's going to be on the floor first? Who's going to dive first and get that ball? That's the first way you test yourself. Who's going to give more effort? We haven't given that effort. For a long time, the conservative movement has been the controlled opposition. And we relished in the convenience and comfort of that. And now we realize that it was never intended to preserve your freedoms. What were we conserving? We were conserving the liberal order. We were the controlled opposition conserving this technological advancement where there will be nothing left of American citizenship and America's founding ideas. We were just running the counterintuitive that made the whole thing seem legitimate and fair, while the technology caught up to a place where now nobody can deny it. And exactly that is what we have to break away from now. Sure, watch the podcast. Please watch me. Watch the great Steve Bannon. If you're going to watch somebody, watch him, because they're trying to take him out too. Watch him. But when you're done, you better be hitting those streets. You better be door knocking. You better be organizing some type of public demonstration. I don't care if it's you and 7 other people on the corner for an hour with a sign that says "No to Forever Wars." You better be doing it. And you better be posting I better see pictures of it. I better see pictures of you and your friends or your family or your people who think the same way you do. I better see pictures of you out there somewhere. Somewhere you better be out there fighting. We need people to report to the front line now. This has been another episode of Please Call Me Crazy, brought to you by Free People Radio and powered by our favorite sponsor, TireGet.com. That's TireGet.com, one of the few companies that's willing to put their money where their mouth is. They never try and censor what it is that we say. They're a real American company, a real America First company that believes in having a country. That's rare now. Increasingly, it's more rare. So you got to buy tires from everybody has to buy tires, but buy your tires from us. Help fund the movement. We're not trying to get rich. We'd like not to go bankrupt, but hell, the whole country's going bankrupt, so who knows? But if you have to buy tires, kick a few bucks our way, please. It would help. It will help. And if you want to, go to roycewhite.us. That's the campaign website. If you small dollar donations, we want every single one of them. Don't let these neoliberals try and convince you that I'm some type of financial crook. Are you kidding me? The $37 trillion in debt they put you. $37 trillion in debt. And they're trying to say that I'm not responsible because of $5,200? You've got to be kidding me. It's preposterous. It's actually absurd. $2 trillion goes walking out the back door of the Department of Defense. They can't audit themselves when it comes to weapons of mass destruction, but they're coming down with an iron fist on me for not being able to audit a campaign. I'm not an accountant. I'm not a CPA. I wasn't the treasurer on the campaign. Average American citizens have trouble with accounting. We're not accountants. Okay? I mean, that's part of what we should be teaching in school probably. Accounting, economics, law, things that they don't teach you until you're in the belly of the beast and they're talking down to you about penalizing you and taking your freedom away. You think that's by accident? My point is they take $2 trillion out the back door of the Department of Defense. You're $37 trillion in debt, $172 trillion in unfunded liabilities. They want to push the age of retirement so they don't have to pay the Social Security. And they're trying to tell you that I'm some crook for $5,200. Go to roycewhite.us today. We appreciate your viewership and your listenership now and in the future. Our thoughts and prayers are with the great Donald Trump. I wasn't always his biggest fan. I've come a long way. I was bought into the woo-woo at one point too. I was caught up in my own little life. And there was one little thread that came undone. Now, have I always been anti-establishment from the very beginning? But did I understand this party politics narrative? I really didn't. I regarded the whole thing as being illegitimate, the whole thing as being corrupt. And I approached it from that lens. And sometimes I was critical of Donald Trump for that reason. Because in my mind, I think, well, Donald Trump's in it, he's corrupt with the rest of them. Forget it. But when you pay attention to the details, there's a whole nother story there. And I think now more than ever, American citizens are waking up to it. They're waking up to it. Help them. Help them see it. Don't give up. Don't be discouraged. Be enthusiastic. Be optimistic. Have that sense of urgency. Like I tell my young players on the basketball team, we're gonna be playing in a game. Tonight at 7 p.m. State tournament. Be enthusiastic, but have that sense of urgency. Have that sense of urgency and be enthusiastic and optimistic and positive. That's the winning recipe. Donald J. Trump. Our thoughts and prayers are with you and your family. We are disgusted by how the legal system in this country has been weaponized against you and by way of the rest of us as well. Disgusting. And it's despicable that they would bring some black people up there to be the face of it. It's despicable. And all you black bourgeoisie sellouts who think I saw D.L. Hughley, you mealy mouth sellout. You are the absolute worst. You have the audacity to celebrate as though this is a moment of black history. This is a noteworthy moment of black history because the people who led these witch hunt prosecutions happen to have black skin. Are you stupid? I can't wait to run into some of you people. I'll tell you that. When I run into you, I'm spitting on the floor because you disgust me. You disgust me, and you know exactly what you're doing. And it's got nothing to do with rights. It's got nothing to do with citizenship or Americans or democracy. You don't care about democracy. You people vote for a Democrat Party that you know is fully embedded into the global elite agenda of this country and of the entire Western civilization. You know you're completely embedded in that group, in that worldview, and you know they undermine democracy all across the world. Victoria Nuland, Bob Keegan, all these other international dignitaries, you know that they greenlight coups and all kinds of other malicious, nefarious political operations all around the world. And you're shilling for the same people who killed Malcolm. But what I know that most people wouldn't know, most white people wouldn't know, and even some black people wouldn't know, you're the same black bourgeoisie that didn't like Malcolm when he was alive. You're the same black bourgeoisie that didn't support Malcolm when he was living. And now there's going to be a referendum in that community, see? Because the more Malcolm X types, we're back kicking. We're back up. We stood back up. We're coming. We're coming. We're going to we're going to go back door to door in that community, and we're going to see what the referendum really is on the Malcolm X types versus the Reverend Al Sharpton types. I'm not going to say Martin Luther King because he was in a league of his own. But they killed him too, and for a reason. And after him, they replaced him with people like Reverend Al Sharpton. Now you got Ben Crump, people that can't even put 3 sentences together, and these are your leaders. D.L. Hughley, these are your leaders. You people are doing this to get laid. I know the truth. You're doing it for money, and you're doing it to get laid, and we're going to expose that. Yeah, there's no sacred honor in that. See, me personally, I never needed to switch my views for my romantic pursuits. And ultimately, when you're a man who doesn't change his worldviews for romantic pursuits, they end up calling you a misogynist. And that's what we're going to talk about on Wednesday. The fight continues. Godspeed. God bless America.